process of assessment is really important, not because it's the only thing that we care about, because what we care about is students learning and students progressing in all sorts of different ways. But assessment is an inevitable part of learning. It's also a really useful part of learning. It's a part where students get to really consolidate the work that they've done so far and go back to it and make proper sense of it. Even the act of solving a problem within an examination itself is a learning event. So we want our students to understand that assessment, even doing difficult exams, is a completely normal part of learning and something that will happen all of the time. And we want them to get to their final exams so used to doing assessments that they don't suffer from anxiety and end up being hampered by nerves and unable to perform at their best. So our mock exams and our topic assessments, in-class assessments and low-stakes assessments that take place every day in lessons are all part of a wide range of strategies that we use to get students used to being tested and used to using those testing events as a real opportunity to make more sense of things, connect more ideas together, understand things and respond with more confidence. We do have some students, like in every school, who suffer from severe anxiety around assessments, but our response to that is at the same time both understanding but also uncompromising, in a sense that we say it's still going to happen, you're still going to have to deal with this, and the more often we do it and the more often we talk about everything that's been involved with it and get you used to the idea, the less problems you'll have in the end. And actually students respond to that approach really well. You don't remove the challenge, you just equip the students with the ability to handle the challenge and rise to it.
So we've just completed our first major assessment cycle, so I thought I'd sort of talk you through what we did and the rationale behind it, and hopefully you can see the benefit that the students are getting from it. So part of it was down to the fact that because of COVID they hadn't done their GCSE exams, but mainly it was just because we wanted to have a really accurate, rigorous assessment so that we can gauge where they're at and guide them as to how to progress when they could return in the new year. So the first thing we did was we collapsed the timetable for 3 days and we structured their exams, giving them a little bit of space where they had no lessons so they were able to revise, and it was just giving them that experience of a real examination timetable where they have to sort of manage their time in between papers and not just revise for what is coming up the next day, which is something that a lot of them had not had the experience of doing. And they've been talking a lot about revision strategies, both in lessons and in their PPEP lessons. So we wanted to give them a good opportunity to put some of that advice into practice. So having marked all the assessments across the 3 subjects, computer science, physics and maths, quite a bit of analysis has taken place, and we're trying to really encourage the students to be self-analytical as well and identify their areas. So in maths, this is how we're approaching it, and we're taking different approaches across the 3 subjects, and then we will ask the students to give us some feedback as to which they've found the most effective. In terms of the actual assessments that they did, in maths they did the pure content from an AS paper, because we've completed that within our curriculum by Christmas. So one thing that I'm sort of quite keen on doing is making sure that the psychological side of what we do is accurate. So we make sure that the papers look like real examination papers. So in maths they had the question paper and the answer booklet, and we try to make those look as realistic to the OCR papers that they will sit in their real exams. And hopefully that will just reduce the anxiety a little bit when they're sitting their real exam. There was a few students shielding, so we were able to use our OneNote to allow them to access the paper at a certain time and upload their answers. So you can see one of the students here who completed it at home. So we had the question paper on the left, and then he was able to complete his answers on the right hand side, and then we were able to go in and mark that for them. And sort of the main purpose really of the assessment is for the students to be able to gauge where they are at with certain topics within maths, and the same for us as teachers. We want our students to be independent, but we realise that they're still, at the start of year 12, they've just finished their first term of A-level studies, so we want to give them a little bit of guidance. So on the front of their answer booklets in maths, they have each question number and how many marks it was, and that allows them to sort of self-assess. We gave them a fairly basic grid, which they can, and it was basic on purpose because hopefully in the future they'll be able to replicate it for themselves and we won't have to provide the guidance, they'll be able to do it independently, where they can analyse whether they're secure with topics, whether there's some improvement required or significant improvement required, and they are then going to spend the next few days having one-to-one meetings with teachers from each subject, where they can sit down and talk through how they're going to improve and come up with an action plan about how they can address their weaker areas. And there's some of them who scored extremely highly and don't have as much weaker areas, so we can discuss how they're going to extend and deepen their knowledge and apply it to different situations. As part of this, where they, the question is always, well, they got it wrong on the assessment, so where does the feedback come in? One thing we're doing now is providing video solutions onto the question paper in the OneNote so that the students can just watch the video of how they should have done the question for the ones that they got wrong. And that's really made our feedback cycle a lot more efficient. They're not having to sit and listen to a teacher explain a question which they got correct. They can just go and watch the one that they need to watch as an individual. And then in their meeting, they're then able to discuss if they still don't understand. And then from a teacher point of view, again, not something that's unique to our school. I know many schools will do it, but I think it's just about being consistent and really rigorous with what we're doing. So we've analysed the assessment question by question, so that we as teachers can sort of see, is there any major areas we need to address, such as this one here, where we maybe need to look into why so many students drop marks on that question and address that either through lessons or homework.
Question 5 asks us to find the set of values for a for which the equation ax squared plus 8x plus 2 equals 0 has no real roots. So to prove that this has no real roots, the easiest way for most people was to look at the discriminant, so b squared minus 4ac. So if we look at the equation here, then a is equal to a, b is equal to 8, and c is equal to 2. So if I work this out, I get 8 squared subtract 4 times a times 2, which gives me 64 subtract 8a. Okay, now it says that we want to find the set of values for a such that there are no real roots. So in order for there to be no real roots, the value of the discriminant has to be less than 0. Okay, so you can state this here. Some of you stated it at the start.
Alright, so we're looking at the analysis of the mock exams that we've just done in December. What we're doing is we're analysing each individual question based on topic and looking exactly where students have gained marks and where they've dropped marks. Okay, so when we have their one-to-one meetings, we can provide them with a sheet here that gives them a breakdown of absolutely every single question they took, every topic that they've done, how they marked against the total marks available, and then there's a space there for them to take it away and reflect on what they did wrong, what they did right within the individual question. And that will focus their revision going forward into the new year. And then obviously we'll use that data then as a class to target future lessons and where large groups have missed a certain point, we can recover that. We're doing this early so that we've got plenty of time to address things to put them right.
Okay, so what we do in physics is that we've made a mock where we try to balance not only the different topics but also the different type of questions and the different type of skills, so they can inform the revision better and they can become better learners. We know they spend a lot of time revising, but we know that that time is not always well used. So what we've done when collecting the data, if you look at the screen, is that we collected all the data from every question. So what they've done in every question, but underneath I've separated them according to the skill that they have. So in the first column in here, you would see there are 3 types of skills. They're all summarized in here. So they can either recall means memorize something like a definition, apply a direct application of what they've learned, or analyze when they're in a different context, can I understand what's happening? In terms of the type of questions, I've looked and tried to balance the amount of extended response, that's the long questions, the mathematical questions, the required practicals, so questions on practicals, and multiple choice. And then we go on topic by topic. In a way that when we give them the analysis of the paper, we can put on a table how they perform. So what percentage of the total mark on that particular skill have they got compared to the percentage, to the average percentage in the classroom, and then they can evaluate what they need to do better. For example, this one that I have in here, in terms of skills, the one that they can work a bit more on is analysis, because they got less. Having said that, they've actually got more than the average. In terms of type of questions, this person has got an A, so this student obviously doesn't have so many problems, but you can identify in here that the one on practical skills is slightly lower, and the extended writing are slightly lower than what they've got on the other type of questions, so they can practice more on those. In terms of the different topics, you can see that on materials and combined waves is the ones that they need to revise the most. This is a way for them to actually understand and come up with targets of how can they modify what they've done to learn it better. I find that often the problem is that although they practice questions, they don't mark those questions, so they don't learn what they're making wrong, and they keep on doing the same mistake until they remember the mistake rather than remember the good thing. This is part of a project to make them more independent, and to be more independent we need to teach them metacognition, which means that we need to teach them to evaluate themselves. The job that normally a teacher does, they rely on a teacher to tell them what to do next. If they know what they need to do better, basically when they're revising, they can modify that revision whenever they have time. They know what they need to do in order to really improve.